Hey everyone, this is Neil once again from the Overclock magazine, and today I'm here to talk to you about the ROG STRIX GeForce RTX 4080 OC edition. Okay, as usual, the first thing I have to tell you about this graphics card is that it's super expensive. Locally, you're looking at 35,000 Rand for an RTX 4080, and if you have to import it from Amazon, you are looking at about 1,840 US dollars including shipping, which translates into about 32,000 Rand. So you could save about 3 grand if you decide to import, but of course you don't get a local warranty and all of that other stuff. Now, the reason I have to talk about the price this time specifically above everything else or before everything else is because value for money is not something that this graphics card is trying to go for. For 800 Rand more, you can get an RTX 4090 from some of the competitors, or for $50 more. So there is that, and I'm very much aware of that. So believe you me when I say that the price of this graphics card and how obscenely expensive it is not lost to me. However, if you are able to get it for a cheaper price, wherever you may be, then you are in for a real treat, because I think this is one of the best RTX 4080s money can buy. So of course, it's got a custom cooler, custom PCB, and it's using the AD103 GPU from NVIDIA, right? Like all RTX 4080s. So what does that mean for you? It means that you're going to get 9,728 CUDA cores. You're going to get a 256-bit bus, memory bus at least, that's populated by Micron GDDR6 memory. I think it's actually rated at 24 gigabits per second, even though the official specification on this graphics card is only 22.4 gigabits per second. Now, more than just the GPU that's on this graphics card, which you are very familiar with, how it's powered is through an 18-phase power design, and I think it uses 70 amp power stages, and the memory is through a 3-phase power design that uses 50 amp power stages. Does any of this matter to you? Of course it does, particularly if you're going to be doing LN2 overclocking. But if you're just going to be water cooling and using it with the very robust and very capable air cooler that this one has, then none of this stuff actually matters. It's very much academic. However, again, for the LN2 enthusiasts and so forth, there are some voltage measuring points which you can only access if you take off the cooler naturally. So now that we've spoken about just the basics of the graphics card, what is it that makes this ROG STRIX GeForce RTX 4080 worth your while? Well, it's so well designed, so well designed. And I will say this, when the lights are on and so forth, then it starts to look really nice. And apologies for not having the graphics card powered on so you could see the actual RGB. I had an issue with the PSU, or rather a PSU not capable of powering this graphics card. I know, right? But anyway, this graphics card looks the part, particularly when the RGB lights are on. I know this is not for everybody, but I think it's tastefully done. And well, tasteful is relative as well. I just like the fact that there's a ton of RGB lighting on the front, on the motif, and not the back as well. So Asus has put a lot of time and energy into making sure that this looks aesthetically pleasing. And more than it looking aesthetically pleasing, it needs to be a very good cooler, and fortunately it is such a wonderful cooler. So this cooler has 6 heat pipes, I believe, and it has vapor chamber technology as well, but it's exactly the same cooler that you get on the RTX 4090. And if it's able to cool that GPU, then it's surely able to cool the RTX 4080 as well. And true to that testing as well, the peak temperatures I actually recorded throughout my entire testing session in the middle of this blazing summer that we had is 66 degrees centigrade. That is very low for a graphics card that's going full tilt, that's doing firmark and so forth. In gaming, you are likely to see temperatures at around 61 degrees, sometimes even 59 degrees, depending on the system and depending on how much airflow you have in your particular system. So now that I've gotten through the basics of that graphics card, let me tell you what I really appreciated about this one. The performance. Ultimately, is always going to be about the performance. I will tell you that at 1080p, this graphics card is not going to have a fast enough CPU to power it and make it reach its full potential, because I used a 13900K on the ROG Z790 Extreme motherboard with some G-Skill DDR5 at 7200, DDR5 7200 CL34, and I'm telling you, I was still CPU bound. And I can tell you, even if I added 200 megahertz to that, so I was running 5.7 gigahertz on all cores, I would still be CPU bound. And nothing displays this more vividly than the 3D Mark scores, where you can actually see the GPU score is so much higher than the CPU score, showing you that you are actually CPU bound, because ideally you want these scores to match. So when you up the resolutions, of course, then you start to run into some GPU limitations. And I think this is where this graphics card is more comfortable. So that's at ultra wide QHD resolution. So we're looking at 3440 by 1440 or 2560 by 1440. That's where this graphics card is gonna hit a sweet spot. And I'm not saying it's not capable of doing 4K. It definitely is. However, if you are gonna be doing 4K, you're gonna want to use DLSS. And nothing makes this more vividly clear than Cyberpunk 2077. Because if you max out that game on this graphics card, your average frame rate at 4K is 31 frames per second or something like that. I know some people can play 30 FPS, but I can't. I need my 60 FPS, right? Or as close to 60 as possible. Fortunately, we have DLSS. Even DLSS 2 at the maximum quality will give you frame rates above 60 FPS. And of course, if you use DLSS 3 with frame generation, the frame rates just go ridiculous. Now, that's Cyberpunk, which is an extreme case. But if you look at something like Red Dead Redemption 2, I literally maxed out that game. So in the custom settings and everything, I turned everything on and turned up everything to the max slider except multi-sampling AA, which I left at 4x. But everything else was max tilt. And I think at 4K, I was still getting frame rates above 60 FPS. In fact, above 70 FPS. So that just shows you how much GPU power is on this ROG Strix GeForce RTX card. Before you even consider buying it, just make sure that you have the space in your case that can fit such a graphics card, because just in lengthwise, it's about 36 centimeters, 15 centimeters in height, and about 7 centimeters deep, which is kind of big, right? It's really, really big. Well, with that said, I did try the OC scanner in the new GPU Tweak 3, and I must say, it was able to, it takes a while, right? So you may even wait up to 20 minutes. But once it's able to do that, I think it gave me at some point 3 gigahertz as the realistic max GPU clock frequency that I could use. And I must say that's fairly impressive. I know that not all GPUs will overclock the same, but the fact that I could get to 3 gigahertz for me is more than good enough. Now let's go back to GPU Tweak. GPU Tweak 3 is literally the best GPU tweaking software I've come across. And I know there's Afterburner and all of that other stuff, but comparing what it's able to do for you versus everything else, I think this is a very complete suite. Number one, you do get OSD, you obviously get profiles, you obviously get BIOS updates as well, you get recording, screen recording, you get so many other features that you generally don't think of when you think of tweaking applications for graphics card. Is it the best interface that you could get? Definitely not, right? I'm just not a fan of the color scheme and whatnot, but in terms of functionality and the features that it has, it definitely has come a long way, and it is one of the programs that I actually recommend to use when you are overclocking this graphics card. Now, one of the other things that you might want to know about is that this graphics card supports Fan Connect 2. Now, you know what that is. That means that there are 2 fan headers on the edge of the graphics card that allow you to connect 2 fans, which will then be controlled by the conditions of the graphics card. You also get a quiet mode and a performance mode. All the results that I have here are in quiet mode. Why is that? Because I don't think the performance mode is actually worth it. There is nothing to be gained there. And talking about that, the quiet mode here actually supports 0 dB mode. So the 0 dB mode, of course, allows the fans to be off completely up to 50 degrees. And then at 55 degrees onwards, then the fans will start spinning up. Of course, these are axial fans, whatever that means to you. And they supposedly allow 23% more airflow than the traditional fan of the same size. They don't really say compared to what, but they just say 23% more. Did I measure that? No, I didn't. Do I believe that? Possibly, because like I said, the cooler here is massive. I mean, the graphics card is literally half of the card. The length of the card is just very small. The PCB is very small, but the actual card length is humongous. And all of that is just cooling. With the metal brace, with the vapor chamber, with the heat pipes, the fin stack and all of that. It's just a complex cooling mechanism, but it does work extremely well, as I told you and as I showed you before. 66 degrees peak temperatures in Fairmark. I think that is highly impressive. So overall, what do I think of this graphics card? I think it's fantastic. I actually think it's quite brilliant. I mean, again, the performance, which you'll be able to see at the end of this review in the benchmarks, is staggering. You'll be able to see that in some situations where 7900 XT scoring like 17 frames per second, this one is doing 31. So it's almost double the performance. And I think despite the pricing issues, NVIDIA's done an incredible job with this GPU line. I definitely don't like the pricing at all. I think the pricing is just ridiculous. But in terms of just the raw technology, I think they've done a stellar job, as always. So let me know what you guys think of this graphics card. Remember to share, like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. So take care and peace.